The moment the music swelled for our entrance, a voice cut through the air, sharp and unwelcome. Amelia. Every head in the sun-drenched garden turned. On our wedding day, Julian, the man who had shattered her world 7 years prior, the ghost she swore she had laid to rest, had returned. He stood at the end of the aisle in a rumpled t-shirt and jeans, holding a fistful of flowers clearly pilfered from one of the venue's own arrangements. "I'm back," he said, his voice carrying an unearned confidence. "Will you still marry me?" Amelia, who I had only ever known as a bastion of careful composure, a woman who measured her every emotion, simply crumbled. The meticulously constructed dam of her poise broke, and she ran from my side, not with hesitation, but with the desperation of someone finding water in a desert. She fell into his arms, her sobs echoing through the stunned silence, and through her tears she repeated the words, "I do," over and over, a frantic, broken mantra. The guests, a sea of confused and pitying faces, all looked to me, expecting an outburst, a scene, a confrontation. But I simply took a step back, ceding the small, flower-strewn stage to them. I even offered them the marital home we were supposed to move into, a gesture of goodwill that felt both necessary and absurd. Amelia, catching my eye for a brief moment, had the presence of mind to whisper a promise, her words laced with a strange sort of guilt-ridden conviction. "Don't worry, Alex. I'm just going through the motions with him. We already have our certificate. I'll always be your wife." What she didn't know, what no one in that garden knew, was that my entire relationship with her had been a form of repayment for an old kindness. And that marriage certificate she held so dear? It was a complete fabrication. The air buzzed with whispers as the unexpected drama unfolded. Before I could fully process the shift in my own reality, Amelia was hastily pulling the simple gold band from her finger, the one I had placed there just an hour before. With a reverence that stung, she carefully slid it onto Julian's finger. Seeing the pure, unadulterated joy that lit up her face, a joy I had only ever seen in fleeting glimpses, I couldn't help but let out a dry, silent laugh at my own expense. I rubbed the pale, empty space on my ring finger, a ghost of a commitment that had never truly existed. Amelia was a woman of exacting standards, a lover of ceremony and perfection. I had proposed to her countless times, each attempt rejected for some minor flaw she perceived as a lack of sincerity. Once, a single unironed crease in my suit jacket was enough for her to storm away, refusing to speak to me for a month. It wasn't until I had chartered a private yacht and orchestrated a dinner surrounded by 1,000 floating roses that she had reluctantly, finally, agreed. Now, this man, Julian, stood before her in a plain white t-shirt and wrinkled jeans, holding flowers he'd casually snatched from a decorative vase. He offered no grand words, no poetic promises. A simple, almost arrogant, "marry me," was enough to have Amelia weeping with joy, repeating her vows like a prayer. It was only in that stark contrast that I finally understood the old adage I'd heard about true love having no standards. This was the same man who had abandoned her 7 years ago, a departure that led directly to the car accident that disfigured a portion of her skin, and left her with such deep psychological trauma that she had attempted to end her life on multiple occasions. In all those years of her recovery, he never once visited, never once called. Unsurprisingly, none of the guests who knew the true history of their relationship were cheering. Only Amelia, hopelessly, willingly, was trapped in the orbit of his destructive gravity. I quietly turned and began to walk away, leaving the stage to them. I hadn't even made it to the edge of the manicured lawn when a friend, his face contorted with outrage on my behalf, spoke up, his voice booming across the silent crowd. "Alex, you can't be serious. You helped her heal from what he did to her. You put so much into this, all for her to run back to the very person who broke her? What a waste of this beautiful wedding. What rotten luck!" He spoke loudly, intentionally trying to champion my cause, but his words only made the guests exchange more puzzled glances. Even Amelia's closest friends, the ones who had witnessed her long and painful recovery, couldn't comprehend her actions. On stage, Amelia looked uneasy, casting a nervous glance at Julian. He, in turn, merely scanned the crowd, completely unembarrassed by the spectacle. Instead, he let out an irritated huff. "Amelia, you just agreed to marry me, but you're using wedding posters with another man's face on them. It doesn't seem like you're very serious about this. Forget it. I won't marry you." With that, he contemptuously tossed the ring I had bought onto the grass and made a show of turning to leave. Anyone else, in the midst of their own wedding, would have been incensed by such manipulative theatrics. But not Amelia. She scrambled to pick up the ring, desperately begging him not to go. To prove her commitment, she grabbed a pair of scissors from a gift-wrapping table and began frantically cutting my face out of every large poster we had displayed, tossing the remnants into a nearby trash bin like garbage. After this frantic display of devotion, Amelia seemed to believe Julian would be satisfied. She approached him again, trying to place the ring back on his finger, but he dodged her hand. His eyes scanned the floral arrangements, his lip curling in disdain. "I hate red roses. They're so tacky. Whose terrible taste was this?" Amelia forced an embarrassed, apologetic smile. "I don't like them either," she lied. "Alex insisted on it. I couldn't change his mind. Let's just get rid of all of them." Hearing this, I looked up at her, at the woman who was so transparently hiding her own sadness. Red roses were the only flower Amelia truly loved. She had once told me that she didn't want commercially cultivated ones. They had to be nurtured with love to achieve true beauty. Because of that one conversation, I had purchased a 10-acre plot of land 2 hours from the city and had personally cultivated a field of roses, watering and tending to them daily for over a year to ensure that every single bloom at our wedding would be vibrant and perfect. And now, simply because Julian voiced a casual dislike, she was ready to have them all destroyed. They began to overturn the floral arches and arrangements I had spent weeks painstakingly designing. They trampled each flower underfoot, the petals crushed into the pristine white runner. Chaos bloomed where order had been. Yet Julian remained dissatisfied. He found fault with the dozens of red balloons floating serenely above, taking a pin and bursting them one by one. As the balloons popped with sharp, ugly reports, the remaining guests began shaking their heads and quietly leaving. With the scene almost entirely ruined and the crowd thinned to only a handful of bewildered onlookers, Amelia was still eager to embrace him, only to be pushed away once more. Julian looked her up and down, taking in the stunning, custom-made wedding dress she wore, and raised an eyebrow. "Did he pick this dress for you?" Amelia froze, her eyes darting towards me for a split second before she looked down at the floor. It wasn't just that I had picked it. The dress was designed specifically for her. Every single rose embroidered onto the silk was stitched by hand by a renowned designer, a process that took months. It was crafted to align with every single one of her tastes. I remembered the genuine, uninhibited joy in her eyes when she first tried it on, a memory that had made me happy for weeks. I knew this dress was her favorite thing she owned, but now, terrified that Julian would change his mind and leave again, she was determined to change out of it. As she rushed towards the bridal suite, she encountered me in the hallway. She must have assumed I was there to stop her. After all, through all those agonizing days and nights as she mourned Julian, I had been the constant by her side, her caretaker, her safe harbors. She must have felt a pang of guilt, because she offered me a rare, fleeting hug and whispered softly, Don't worry, Alex. It's all just an act. I just want him to feel what it's like to be abandoned. I'm sorry you had to stand in for my mother at this wedding. She couldn't make it. The next one, I'll plan it myself, and I'll make sure she's there." With that, she hurried away, her mind consumed by the fear that Julian might slip through her fingers again. As her familiar scent gradually faded from the air around me, a profound sense of finality washed over me. I wasn't going to tell her I was leaving. There was no future for us to discuss. I pulled out my phone and sent a short text to her mother. "Auntie, Julian is back. Amelia doesn't need me anymore. It's time to end our agreement." I took a cab back to the house we were supposed to share. The silence of the ride a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. In the frantic days leading up to the wedding, I had barely eaten, subsisting on coffee and adrenaline. I ordered takeout, and just as I finished cleaning up the containers, Amelia's mother called. She sighed deeply, the sound heavy with years of weariness. "Alex, these past years have been so tough on you. It's Amelia's loss, truly. She doesn't deserve someone like you." I remained silent. For 7 years, I had done what I did simply to repay a debt. When I was a teenager, my mother had fallen gravely ill, and we couldn't afford the treatment she needed to survive. Amelia's mother, a family friend I hadn't seen in years, stepped in. She provided not only the money, but also used her connections to get my mother the best possible care, saving her life. I promised her back then that I would do anything to repay her kindness. She had just smiled, knelt down to my level, and thanked me for the offer, never expecting to take me up on it. Years later, when we met again by chance, I was a licensed psychologist with a thriving practice. She, learning of my profession, tearfully asked for my help with her heartbroken daughter, who was spiraling after being abandoned. I put my entire career on hold to stay by Amelia's side, attending to her every need, essentially acting as her personal caretaker. With my professional help and constant support, she slowly began to recover. About a year ago, she seemed to be almost fully healed. I was preparing to tell her the truth and leave when she wrapped her arms around my neck one night, telling me she had finally forgotten Julian and wanted to build a future with me. After years of dedicated care, loving her had become a part of my daily existence. In that moment, I was genuinely moved, and I agreed to stay. But she never knew about the promise I had made to her mother all those years ago. If Julian ever returned and Amelia's heart still belonged to him, I would step aside without a fight. Now, things had played out exactly as I had feared they might. It was time for me to exit her life. After a bit more small talk, knowing she couldn't change my mind, Amelia's mother asked when I was leaving. "I've booked a flight for tomorrow morning, Auntie." Just as I finished speaking, I heard a key in the lock, and Amelia walked through the front door. Hearing my end of the conversation, she teased playfully. "We're getting married, Alex. Why can't you start calling her Mom already?" I simply said a quiet goodbye into the phone and hung up. The door was still wide open, and right behind Amelia, Julian sauntered in. Before I could say a word, Amelia was already busy, happily showing him around the house we had furnished together, asking him to make himself comfortable on the sofa. Julian plopped down, glanced around the room with a proprietary air, and then looked at me with a smug smirk. "Amelia tells me you used to give her a foot massage every single night." I looked over at Amelia, but she guiltily avoided my gaze, busying herself with fluffing a cushion. After Julian had left her, Amelia's emotional state was so fragile that she suffered from chronic insomnia. In the beginning, I had massaged her feet using acupressure techniques to help her relax enough to sleep. Over time, it simply became a part of our nightly routine, a private, intimate ritual. And now, she had already shared that intimacy with him. Julian leaned closer to Amelia, his tone indifferent. Why don't you show me, Amelia? I'd like to see just how well he took care of you." Amelia seemed completely oblivious to the demeaning nature of the request. She happily agreed, fetching the foot basin and filling it with warm water. With those delicate hands that I used to massage daily, she knelt before him. For half an hour, she took off his shoes and socks and gently washed his feet, mimicking my exact routine, patiently asking, "How's the temperature? Is the pressure okay?" Julian, reveling in the indulgence, looked at me with triumphant eyes, silently communicating, "See this? The princess you cherished is happy to be my servant." I wanted to say something, to remind Amelia of her own worth, for her mother's sake, if not her own. But then Julian spoke up, his tone dripping with mockery. "Amelia, you're really good at this. Did you work in a foot massage parlor or something?" Though it was a shockingly rude question, Amelia took it as a compliment, responding blissfully, "No, but if you think their service is better, I can go learn for you." As she gazed up at Julian, her eyes sparkled with a desperate yearning to prove her love. Seeing this, I swallowed any advice I had wanted to give. I am a doctor, not a magician. Some conditions, I've learned, simply cannot be cured. I turned to leave the room. Julian suddenly stopped me. "Alex, the wedding apartment might still have some formaldehyde concerns from the new paint. Why don't you stay there for a while? Amelia and I can stay here." This was the home that Amelia and I had spent months decorating, the home for which I had paid in full. I thought, for a moment, that Amelia might hesitate, that she might object to him kicking me out of my own house. But without even consulting me, she readily agreed. "That place has been airing out for 6 months. There's no formaldehyde. But if you'd rather stay here, Julian, we can. Alex won't mind." I paused, a slight, bitter smile touching my lips. It was true. For the past 7 years, whether as her therapist or her boyfriend, I had no opinions of my own. I had always put her first. But now, as this chapter finally closed, I was taking the lead. "Amelia, let's break up. You two can stay wherever you want." Amelia paused in her task, dried her hands on a towel, and looked at me, her expression shifting to one of irritation. "What's wrong with you? Why are you throwing a tantrum now?" I ignored Julian's satisfied grin and began to pack my things. Amelia followed me into the bedroom, chattering away. "I was just pretending earlier, Alex. You didn't actually believe it, did you?" Pretending. For 7 long years, she had been withdrawn, showing no genuine interest in anything or anyone. But from the moment Julian reappeared, it was as if her entire world had been illuminated, transformed by a sudden, brilliant sunrise. No matter how many times she claimed it was all an act, the change in her was real and profound. She had always deeply loved Julian. That had never changed. Amelia watched me as I silently folded my clothes and placed them in my suitcase. She stared for a long moment before speaking again, her tone shifting to one of condescension. "You're putting on an act, too, aren't you? You're actually pretty convincing. Don't worry. I know you can't leave me. I won't abandon you." I still didn't respond. In my line of work, it's crucial to make a vulnerable patient feel needed. It gives them a reason not to give up on life. Hearing her speak to me that way, like I was the dependent one, I neither agreed nor argued. When I finished packing my suitcase and still hadn't said a word, she finally showed a flash of real frustration, kicking the side of my luggage in a fit of pique. "Go then, if you want to. See if I care. Just don't come crying back to me later." She spat, the words laced with venom. She turned on her heel and went back to the living room to tend to Julian. I picked up my suitcase and walked toward the door. As I left, I could see her massaging Julian's temples, her voice loud and performative. "Does that feel good?" I didn't listen for his response. I closed the door behind me and headed for a nearby hotel. Just after I checked in, Amelia's mother called again. She was flying back into the country the next day and wanted to take me out for a meal. I had no reason to refuse. After a long, uninterrupted night of sleep, I went to meet her. She had chosen my favorite restaurant and had already ordered a spread of my favorite dishes. After we exchanged pleasantries, she slid a bank card across the table. "Alex, there are $30 million in this card. Please consider it compensation for everything you've done for Amelia all these years. My family has let you down terribly." Her eyes were red, filled with a deep and genuine regret. She was a single mother who had chosen her career at a time when Amelia needed her most. Years later, she had become an incredibly successful businesswoman, but she was always haunted by the guilt she felt over her daughter. It was why she was always so lenient, so indulgent with her. Amelia got all of her money from her mother. If her mother were to stop the flow of funds, Amelia would have nothing. But very few people knew this. Everyone, including Amelia herself to some extent, believed she was successful on her own. In reality, her boutique company bled money every month, staying afloat only because of her mother's constant financial support. Many people, I suspected, were drawn to Amelia for her apparent wealth. But not me. I pushed the card back across the table. "Auntie, your kindness saved my mother's life. That is a debt that can't be repaid with money. Please, there's no need for this." Amelia's mother raised an eyebrow. "That was just a small favor years ago. You've had it so hard caring for Amelia. You must take this." As I was about to reject her offer again, a familiar voice called my name from across the restaurant. I looked up and saw Julian jogging towards our table. He made a show of flashing a new Rolex on his wrist while he boasted, "Amelia just got me this watch. She invited me for a meal at the place next door. Can you believe it? I didn't expect to see you here. Alex, what a coincidence." Julian didn't know Amelia's mother by sight. Seeing that I wasn't reacting to his provocations, he kept going. "Your wife is pretty generous, you know. I asked her for $20 million, and she gave me a card right away. I'd suggest you divorce her sooner rather than later. A woman like her is way out of your league." What Julian didn't realize was that Amelia had just come out of the restroom and was standing a few feet away, having heard every single word he said. I just calmly pointed to my suitcase resting by my chair. "I'm moving back to the States permanently. There's no need for any of this now." Soon, Amelia came over, her face a mask of distress, her focus entirely on me. She hadn't even noticed her own mother sitting at the table. She asked coldly, "Alex, we're married. Are you really leaving without even discussing it with me?" I smiled a small, weary smile and pulled the folded document from my wallet, sliding it across the table to her. "Take a close look, Amelia. This marriage certificate is fake." She was completely stunned, unable to process how our marriage could have suddenly become a fabrication. Julian, standing beside her, let out a loud, unrestrained laugh. All his recent manipulations had been aimed at pushing us to divorce, only to find out our marriage was never real to begin with. All his trouble had been for nothing. Seeing Amelia's devastated expression, he managed to stifle his laughter and wrapped an arm around her, comforting her softly. "It's okay, Amelia. You still have me. I'll always be by your side. I'll never leave you." Then he shot me a look. "By the way, Alex, you didn't con her out of any money, did you? Even if you did, don't worry, Amelia. I have lawyer friends who can help get it back." Amelia didn't respond to him. She knew perfectly well that in all our years together, I had never asked her for anything, nor had she ever given me any gifts of substance. In fact, I was the one who had been quietly spending my own savings to maintain our lifestyle. He still couldn't believe I was actually leaving. She forced a smile. "Alex, please don't lie. This isn't funny." Seeing that she was still unwilling to let go, I didn't want to explain any further. I glanced at her mother, who had been ignored by both of them until now, and said, Auntie, could you please handle the rest? I need to catch a flight. Only then did Amelia finally notice her mother sitting there. Mom? Weren't you working abroad? Why didn't you tell me you were back? Julian was visibly taken aback. Recalling his earlier taunts about her generous wife, he politely addressed her as Auntie and shot me a reproachful look. Amelia ignored it all, far more concerned with asking her mother what was going on. Her mother sighed and explained patiently, Amelia, I never told you, but Alex was hired by me. He's a psychologist. He has been with you for 7 years as your doctor. You've fully recovered now, so it's time for him to go back to his own life and his own work. Amelia couldn't believe it. She grabbed my suitcase, holding it tighter. Mom, you're lying to me. How could he just be my therapist? She thought about how good I had been to her, how I had always put her first, and a flicker of understanding seemed to dawn in her eyes, but she didn't say another word, still refusing to let go of my bag. Seeing this, Julian raised an eyebrow and quickly wrapped Amelia in a protective hug. Amelia, this is just his excuse for leaving you. Forget about that jerk. You have me now, and that's all you need. Listening to Julian's smooth talk, Amelia hesitated. However, her mother, who had been observing everything with a cold, clear eye, chimed in. Who asked for your opinion? Julian flinched and tried to deploy his usual act. Ma'am, I know you misunderstand me, but back then, I had no choice but to leave Amelia. My parents were seriously ill. I had to go. Amelia got hurt trying to save me, and I couldn't bear to be a burden on her. Now I have nothing holding me back, and I just want to be good to her. Why can't you let us be together? The sight of a grown man with tears in his eyes, playing the part of a wronged lover, was enough to win over Amelia. Feeling a surge of pity, she cried, It's just misfortunate fate that tore us apart. Watching them act like a pair of star-crossed lovers, cruelly separated by circumstance, Amelia's mother was completely unfazed. She had been through far too much in her life to fall for Julian's cheap tricks. Besides, she had come prepared, already knowing that he had only returned for money. She sneered and interrupted their melodrama, addressing Amelia directly. If you want my support, fine, but on one condition. I will freeze all of your bank accounts and take back the company. If Julian still stays with you when you have absolutely nothing, then I will let you two be together. She offered to let them be, but she made no mention of ever giving them any money. Hearing this, Julian just raised an eyebrow and, after a brief pause, agreed. In truth, he was only there for the money. If Amelia had none, there was no reason for him to stick around. But he likely figured that if Amelia truly suffered, her mother wouldn't be able to bear it, and would eventually relent and help them. Amelia was still hesitant, her eyes fixed on me. Julian held her hand tightly. Amelia, we have true love. I don't blame you for being with another man for these past 7 years. Let's start over and show your mother that we belong together. Under the influence of Julian's sweet-talking, Amelia finally let go of my suitcase. I turned, got into the waiting taxi, and headed for the airport. Behind me, Amelia's mother, a small, grim smile on her face, made a phone call and froze all of her daughter's accounts, including the one from which Amelia had just gifted Julian $20 million. Julian's face turned grim when he found the card declined, but he hid his anger and continued to soothe Amelia. With their funds cut off, she had nothing. The luxury cars and the mansion were all repossessed. They ended up living in a small, run-down apartment. Initially, Julian held on to a sliver of hope. He assumed Amelia's mother would cave if she saw her daughter struggling, so he stayed at home, doing nothing, waiting for Amelia to somehow provide for him. What he didn't realize was that during his long absence, Amelia had been constantly on the verge of collapse, tormenting herself to the point of hospitalization multiple times. Watching Amelia in and out of hospitals had pained her mother deeply. Her daughter could be with anyone but Julian. She could never allow that. It didn't matter to her if a future son-in-law was after money, but not at the expense of treating Amelia the way Julian did. She had made up her mind. Even if Amelia begged for money, as long as she stayed with Julian, she would not get a single penny. Even if it meant her daughter starved, she was determined for Amelia to finally see Julian's true colors. Sure enough, Julian had only returned to leech money from her, to fill the holes in his own failing business ventures. With no money coming from Amelia, he was unwilling to waste any more of his time. One day, when Amelia came back to their small apartment after a long day at a menial job, Julian was nowhere to be found. Just like 7 years ago, he had simply vanished. His phone was disconnected, all lines of communication cut. Amelia was left to cry alone in the cramped, empty apartment. It was only then that she remembered me. She tried to call me for help, but she didn't know that I had changed my number as soon as I landed in the States. Eventually, her mother brought her back home, leaving her in the same abandoned, catatonic state she had been in years before. She barely ate or drank, spending her days staring listlessly into space. This time, however, she wasn't asking her mom to bring back Julian. She was asking for my contact information. Initially against it, Amelia's mother finally relented after seeing her daughter's repeated suicide attempts. She gave her my new number and my work address. Once Amelia was stable and out of the emergency room, I had taken a long break to sort myself out. I was just getting back into my professional life when I received an apologetic call from her mother. She kept saying she was sorry, telling me that I should just leave Amelia alone and not engage. I sighed, finished my shift, and on my way home, I found Amelia waiting for me outside my apartment building. She grabbed my hand, her eyes filled with tears, and declared, "Alex, I've been looking for you for so long. Please, let me make it up to you." She didn't know that her mother had already told me everything that had happened. It wasn't that she was constantly searching for me out of love. Julian had left her again, and I was simply the last resort she could think of. I gently pushed her hand away. "I was just returning a favor to your mother, Amelia. You don't owe me anything. There's nothing between us." Amelia was stunned by my flat refusal. After a long, silent pause, she finally spoke. "Aren't you a doctor? Can I hire you to treat me? You're still just like you were before. Don't leave me, okay?" "I am a psychologist, but I have never pretended to be someone's lover as a form of therapy." Amelia was a unique and extreme case. If it weren't for the debt I owed her mother, no amount of money in the world would have made me agree to that arrangement. And I had already repaid that debt in full. I refused her again. "There's no need. I don't take on cases like that." Saying this, I turned and walked into my building. Amelia didn't follow me that time, and I thought she might have finally let it go. But on my first day back at my practice, the first client who walked into my office was Amelia. I asked her what was wrong, and she just pushed a breakfast container across my desk. "Look, I prepared breakfast for you. It's extra hearty." I glanced down at her hands and noticed new calluses and small burns, signs of manual labor. I knew she had gotten them while taking care of Julian, working to support him. Seeing that I made no move to take the food, she tried to feed me herself, mimicking the way I used to care for her, even cracking awkward jokes to try and cheer me up. But I took care of her back then. Because she was my patient. Because she was sick. Now she was trying to repay me with the same currency of care, but it was a currency I no longer accepted. "Miss, if there's nothing else, you may leave. Next." Without any mercy, I showed her out. She was stubborn, though. She refused to leave. Every single day, she was the first person to sign up for an appointment, always bringing breakfast or some small gift. Eventually, my colleagues found out about the situation and began to envy me for having a rich, beautiful woman pursuing me so relentlessly. I just laughed it off whenever I heard them talking. It might have looked like she was pursuing me, but in reality, she just couldn't let go of the consistent care I had provided. In her heart, she could never truly forget Julian, no matter what she said or did. I paid her no attention, simply contacting her mother to come and get her each time. She continued this routine daily, yet her emotions seemed to remain stable. One sunny afternoon, she asked to take me to the beach. I was just about to decline when her eyes suddenly widened. She had caught sight of Julian across the street. In an instant, she rushed off, once again leaving me behind for him. But this time I felt no sadness, only a profound pity for the circular tragedy of her life. I could have just turned and walked away. But we were in a foreign country. A girl running around in her state could be dangerous. Even if I no longer loved Amelia, I couldn't in good conscience let her get hurt. I had to answer to her mother. After all, years ago, her mother had helped my own mother live long enough to see me get into college before she passed away in peace. With a heavy sigh, I chased after her. In a narrow, deserted alley, Amelia was trying to stop Julian from leaving. A foreign-looking woman who was with him had just walked away in anger. Julian looked completely annoyed. Amelia was sobbing as she clung to his arm, demanding, "Julian, you promised you would never leave me. How can you abandon me twice? I let Alex down for you. I did so much for you. Can't you feel even a little bit of my love?" Julian just sneered, not even bothering to pretend anymore. "You didn't really think I came back because I loved you, did you? Don't be ridiculous. I just needed money. I thought I could rely on you to get some cash from your rich mother. Who knew she'd rather let you suffer than give me a single cent?" His straightforward, brutal words shattered the last remnants of Amelia's dreams. She was devastated, the realization finally sinking in that the man she had loved her entire adult life was only ever after her for money. Michael tried to leave, but she clung on desperately. He looked like he was on the verge of hitting her, but stopped when he saw me approaching. He roughly pushed Amelia towards me, and she stumbled into my arms. He said coldly, "Alex, I'm returning her to you. Keep her away from me, or who knows what I might do." I caught Amelia and helped her stand upright. Meanwhile, Julian swore under his breath as he walked away, complaining, "After all that, all I got was a damn watch. What a rip-off." With Julian gone for good, the last of Amelia's hope shattered. She crouched down on the dirty pavement and cried her heart out, a raw, wounded sound. I stayed silently by her side and called her mother to inform her of everything. When Amelia finally composed herself and saw me still there, she remorsefully hugged me and promised, "Alex, I realize my mistakes now. Could you please give me another chance?" I firmly shook my head. "If there's no love, there's no love. You can't force it." Her eyes immediately welled up with fresh tears, and she dropped to her knees on the ground, pleading desperately. "Please, give me a chance. I'll change. I promise I will. Can you just be like you were before? Even just a little?" I simply looked at her quietly and reminded her, "Love can't be begged for, Amelia. The only thing you can do now is love yourself." She looked at me, seemingly understanding for a moment, but then she said, "I know you still care, Alex. You must still have feelings for me. Why can't we get back together?" I paused, then shook my head again as I explained, "You're overthinking it. This is just professional advice from a doctor to a patient." But Amelia wouldn't listen. She seemed to have become unhinged, only begging not to be abandoned again. I knew her illness had relapsed, and this time it felt worse than before. I had to call her mother again. "Auntie, you have to come and pick Amelia up now. I really can't handle this anymore. If something happens to her, I can't take that responsibility. I only ever wanted to repay a kindness, not sacrifice my own life for it." While Amelia was losing her mind beside me, her mother showed up with several large men who looked like bodyguards. They took Amelia away forcibly as she screamed my name. I knew then that I had to leave too. I had to find a place where no one could track me down, a place where I could finally live my own life. Amelia was sedated and taken back to her family home. When she woke up, she was in her old bedroom. She opened her eyes and called my name a few times, but she never saw my familiar face appear at her door. In the past, even the slightest noise from her would bring me to her side. I'd play soft music to ease her into the day, have her breakfast ready, her milk warmed just right. I would have even planned her outfit for the day. Amelia had always appreciated these things. To her, I was the perfect, attentive boyfriend. But today, I was nowhere to be found. She walked barefoot through the large, silent house, looking for any sign of me, but found nothing. There was no one trailing behind her with a pair of slippers, reminding her to put them on so she wouldn't catch a cold. She curled up in a corner of the living room and stayed there for a long time, until a servant found her and softly called out her name. That's when she remembered, with a crushing finality, that she had lost me for good. She desperately wanted to see me, but no one knew where I was. In a fit of rage and grief, she began smashing furniture until she saw her mother arrive. "Mom, I know you must have his contact information. Please, just tell me. I won't leave him again. I'll cherish him this time, I promise." Her mother, her heart breaking for her daughter, simply shook her head. "Amelia, your illness has already cost that man 7 years of his life. We owe him too much already. We can't bother him anymore. He left on his own, without leaving any contact information for us. Only a few of his close friends know where he is, and they all witnessed how you let him down at the wedding. They're not going to tell you." Amelia stayed in that house, a place filled with my presence, refusing to leave. The memories of our 7 years together, the quiet laughter and the small joys lingered in every room. Whenever she used to get upset, I, with my awkward sense of humor, would try to cheer her up with terrible jokes. She was always cold then, uninterested in anything. Now my jokes, which had never managed to make her laugh before, finally worked. She began talking to the white walls every day, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying. Her mother, deeply worried about her mental state, had surveillance cameras installed throughout the house, terrified of what might happen. The drama was sudden, leaving everyone in shock. Back on a hospital bed after another incident, Amelia seemed lifeless. Her mother, though her own heart was shattered, said to her seriously, "If you die, you will never find Alex." Hearing my name, Amelia froze. The words sunk in. In order to see me again in her lifetime, she finally agreed to take her medication willingly. As her condition slowly improved, she began to spare no expense, hiring private investigators and contacting famous psychologists worldwide, always hoping one of them would be me. She saw one after another, but never the one she longed to see. Meanwhile, I had made more than enough money from my investments over the years. I was traveling the world, seeing everything I had put on hold. When I grew tired of the wandering, I found a secluded mountain hideaway, a place of quiet and solitude, and decided to live out the rest of my days in peace, finally free.